This hearing of the Agriculture Appropriations Subcommittee is now called to order, and I'd like to begin by welcoming FDA Commissioner Dr. Robert Califf, and thank you for being here today. I look forward to discussing the fiscal year 2025 budget request for the FDA. The responsibilities of the Food and Drug Administration are vast and impact the lives of nearly every American. We need to ensure we have the resources to continue your critical mission, and I'm committed to working with you during the appropriations process to provide the funding that you need. That begins now with the fiscal year 2025 budget request that's in front of us. The request includes a total of $3.695 billion in discretionary funding, a $168 million increase, a relatively modest increase for this agency. I'm interested in hearing about your priorities within this budget request, Dr. Califf, and what role this committee can play in ensuring we continue to have the world's safest food and drug supply. I will say that I am frustrated with FDA's lack of urgency in regulating the tobacco products and e-cigarettes that are flooding the market, and I'm also concerned with highly pathogenic avian influenza and its potential impact to our food supply. I continue to be interested in investing resources in our domestic infant formula supply as we continue to recover from the 2022 formula crisis. All of these issues continue to be public health threats to our nation, and the FDA should be using all tools available to address them. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on these issues and what FDA is doing to address them. Dr. Califf, I want to reiterate my continued support for FDA and the dedicated employees at your agency. Last year, we had to make some pretty difficult budget decisions under grim spending caps, and I'm afraid that it is likely this year will not be much better. That's why it's important for us to hear your priorities and the priorities of members of this committee. And thanks again for being here, and I'll turn things over to my ranking member.
Finally, we've contributed significantly to the joint effort to deal with the highly pathogenic avian influenza outbreak, and I'm pleased that our supply of milk products is safe. However, this virus, like all viruses, is mutating. We need to continue to prepare for the possibility that it might jump to humans. Thank you for inviting me today, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Dr. Califf, why don't you start right there and just talk a little bit about what that preparation looks like?
Sure. First of all, it's important, as you all know, we've talked about One Health for a long time, the fact that we all live in a world and a universe where animals and humans are more and more connected because of international transportation, the fact that more people are living closer to farms and on farms, but this is a real example of One Health. Just roughly speaking, it's always a little more complicated than just the first take on it, but essentially the Agriculture Department regulates the cows, we regulate the milk at the FDA, and the CDC has primary responsibility for the health of the workers on the dairy farms. And so we all have to work together across these organizations and agencies to take care of things. And there's so many aspects, I can't go through it all, but primarily from the FDA perspective today, we are accountable for the milk. So when we heard about the problem, we needed to launch a program of testing the milk to make sure that it was safe, knowing that it was likely that there were more infected herds than we initially knew. And in fact, that's what we found. As you well know, when we looked at just milk before pasteurization, that is the raw milk coming into the bulk tanks, about 20% of a national sample turned out to have fragments of virus in it. And then the question was, is this infectious virus or is it essentially fragments of dead virus that have been taken care of by pasteurization? We had a good reason to believe pasteurization would work because of 100 years of pasteurized milk, and in fact it did. We found no evidence of live virus, and I'm pleased to say there are many NIH and Agriculture Department researchers around the country, universities, who were also looking, and we all found the same thing. But now, the other part that we're accountable for at HHS and within FDA is the countermeasures in case this does jump to humans. So we've got to have testing, got to have antivirals, and we need to have a vaccine ready to go. So we've been busy getting prepared for if the virus does mutate in a way that jumps into humans on a larger level. Throughout all of this, because there's so many agencies involved, countless hours of phone calls and Zoom conferences to make sure that we're all coordinated, all in an environment where, let's just say, it's not easy to get access to the farms because, people are understandably protective of the environments in which they work. So a lot of work across the agencies here, and I feel like it's been a good example of how One Health can come together.
Great. Dr. Califf, how do you see how do you see infant formula being managed under the new Human Foods Program?
Well, I'd really like to answer that question in two parts, and I think you may remember the day I was confirmed was the day of the Abbott recall, so it's not a very warm welcome to the FDA to hear that this was going to unfold. And so the first part is what we've already done, because just a comment about the reorganization. I'm sure we'll talk more about it with other questions, but we can't enact the reorganization until we get through congressional notification process. We're still waiting on one branch of the four corners to give us the okay. Then we have to negotiate or really reach agreement with the unions, which I don't think is going to be a big problem, but the unions that represent 80% of our employees have a right to have a say, and then we're ready to go. We're amassed at the starting line to really get going. We have hundreds of people across the FDA who have volunteered to be champions of change in this massive reorganization. But in the interim, because of the urgency of the infant formula issue, we've already done a lot of the work that we had to do. We now have many more people working within currently CIFSAN, the food part of the FDA, on this sort of basic science and regulation that needs to go on, and we've beefed up the inspectorate. So they're called investigators at the FDA. We have a dedicated core. All of the infant formula facilities are being inspected at least once a year. In the case of the Abbott plant, there's a consent decree, so we're essentially there every day talking with them, and as issues come up, dealing with them jointly. But it's a whole different world now that the scientific experts, the investigators, and the leaders meet on a regular basis, plan the inspections, and when things are found, they're dealt with very quickly as compared to a process which, in the routine prior, it took some time to institute the changes. So, and we have, as you know, hired Jim Jones as the head of the Human Foods Program, although it's not the Human Foods Program yet until we, and this better decision-making structure, there was nothing wrong with the people that were trying to make decisions before, but it was not optimally organized to lead to crisp decisions that would lead to action being taken.
Great. Ranking Member Hovind. Doctor, I don't want to put you in a situation with regard to the Supreme Court decision, but I do want to ask you just patently, is mifepristone safe? I'm on the record multiple times about this. We stand by the decisions of the FDA over the years and the constant looking at the surveillance data and clinical trials as they come in. Mifepristone is safe and effective for its indication, and we stand by that. Thank you. Talk to me about vaccine development and HPAI, and I know your role is to approve vaccines, but where are we in that process? And if we do have a zoonotic transmission to humans, what is our posture, and are we ready for that?
I'd say we're ready. You'll notice that part of the budget asks, sort of separate from the rest of the budget, is the pandemic preparedness part of the budget. the way I look at it, we are in an enviable position compared to any time in the history of the world. Senator Hoeven made, rhetorically, I think, made the point that pandemics have always been around. It's just that now, because they used to be limited by the fact people didn't travel, now we're on airplanes, and as we saw with COVID, it moves quickly from one place to another. The enviable position we're in now is we have mRNA templates that are platforms that we have confidence in already, where what used to be a mystery, how do you make a vaccine by the old method that would take many months, now we can do it in just a few weeks to a couple of months. But we got to have the funding to keep the source warm so that we can start up right away. And that's part
that
of what's,
mRNA platform is applicable in this case.
yes, sir.
Great.
And it, it's a great thing for many of the viruses are relatively simple compared to other kinds of organisms. So coming up with a matching vaccine for the exact genetic makeup of the virus is entirely possible in a very short period of time. So it's another place, I didn't mention the NIH before, it's a critical player here. Mm-hmm. The NIH is doing a lot of the background work to characterize the virus with its excellent virologists so that we can be ready working with the industry that makes the vaccines.
Talk to me a little bit about vaping. Why are we not making faster progress on the incredible number of unapproved vaping products that are on the market?
If you'll bear with me for just a minute, I'd like to sort of go through my thinking on this because I'm as frustrated as you are with it. I have to live with it every day, and I have relatives that are addicted to nicotine. I'm from South Carolina and practiced medicine in maybe the seat of the tobacco industry in the past in Durham. So first of all, I do want to point out that we're making progress in combustible tobacco, although we're still going to lose almost 500,000 Americans this year to tobacco-related illness. That and hypertension are the two biggest remediable causes of death that we're dealing with. But just as we're making that kind of progress with combustible tobacco, along came vaping. It was 2016 during my first term that we deemed vaping, but we had no idea it was going to result in 26 million applications for vaping products that happened while I was away at Alphabet. And I came back to find the Center for Tobacco Products full of good, hardworking people, but an overwhelming number of applications from an industry. I was in Silicon Valley, I must say. The combination of an addictive substance called nicotine with marketing done through Silicon Valley techniques was overwhelming. We had a Reagan-Udall report. We have a new head of the Center for Tobacco Products, Brian King, and we've made tremendous progress in this regard. But just as we're getting a handle on the basics of vaping, and by the way, at least by the surveys, the number of teenagers vaping did decline last year, but it's nowhere where it needs to be. Just as we're making that progress, along comes the Chinese manufacturing of vaping products, and the overwhelming vaping products now used by American youth and getting addicted is made in China. So can I go one more minute on this?
Please.
Here we have products that are not legal to sell to Chinese people in China, made in China, and imported into the United States in large numbers. Now, the old regime of dealing with this, one of you had mentioned several 100,000 establishments. It's actually 1 million, because we have 300,000 retail stores selling vaping products in the United States. If we take our 1,400 investigators, i.e. inspectors, and try to have them manage 300,000 vaping establishments, that's math doesn't work. So we got to stop this at the point of import. So we're actively working now with, you talk about multiple agencies, Justice Department. Remember, we can't enforce without the Justice Department agreement if we have to go to court on these issues. And CBP, the border force, is very important here. So I want to work with you all to come up with a way, and you would be amazed if you saw what we have to go through to take action with one product coming into the international mail facility. It's a very complicated legal proceeding because every company has a right to defend itself in court from actions that we take. I think the circumstance here, where you have a product that China won't sell to its own people being imported into the United States to addict youth, we ought to be able to come up with a way to say it's pretty simple. When it comes in, destroy it. And CBP, by the way, can recover the money from the importer for an illegal product. It's an authority that we don't have at the FDA. So we're actively working on that mix. I don't blame
If you need
for
additional authorities from Congress or additional direction to make sure that we're addressing this in a more efficient way, I think you would find a very receptive audience.
I wish I could tell you exactly what it is now, but it will be very shortly. We'll have a composite view from the Justice Department, the FDA, and Border Patrol about what would be most effective.
Yeah.
I want to just cut it off, just not even let it in. Then we can deal with the vaping industry in the United States, which has many additional issues, but at least we could deal with that.
Okay. Senator Murray. I want to thank you, Commissioner Califf, for being here today, and I look forward to working with you and the members of this committee as we work through this year's appropriations process. For members, questions for the record are due by next Wednesday, the 15th of May, and we'd appreciate responses back from FDA within 30 days. And with that, this hearing is adjourned.